The message I want to give to everybody is that each one teach one. It's an old Rasta saying. I don't know where it comes from originally. Each one teach one. So we all learn of each other.
I think it's important also to talk about collectivism and kind of Pan-African schools, because I was recently listening to Akala, and he was talking about his upbringing.
Yes.
And he was talking about how Pan-African schools were key to him getting the grades he got and kind of being part of a collective.
Yeah.
And I think we've kind of lost that.
Do you know what it is? It's that mindset. I think, yeah, in Akala you can see this sense of pride, this sense, like he knows who he is, and so he, for one, he won't let you dictate who he is or where he comes from, or he won't stand for any slander, I think, or slander. For us, I feel like we're so disenfranchised that we haven't necessarily got a sense of self. And then once we have our sense of self, we're more equipped to fight the battle. Because some of us don't even know there's a battle going on. That's where I stand. That's where I come from anyway.
Yeah, we're in a real liminal space.
Yeah.
I feel like the older generation, for example, when I look at you and I look at Akala, there's a real sense of self. But for us, I think the younger generation, we feel not only disenfranchised, but I feel like it's a thing of W.E.B. Du Bois talks about the double consciousness, and it's kind of the way. Kind of like we see people look at us a certain type of way, and we kind of sometimes subconsciously or unconsciously internalize it.
You see, funny enough, I was doing a thing with Akala not so long ago, and we were on stage, and the first thing he said when we started, he said, "Look at this, so many different generations." Now, excuse me, I can't remember the sister's name. There were some young women. They wrote a book called "Slaying Your Lane." You know who those sisters are?
Slaying Your Lane, I remember that.
Slaying Your Lane. It's about being black at university.
Oh, okay.
It's a really good book. I just can't remember the names of them. But they were there, I was there, obviously, and Mary Batman.
Oh,
and
wow.
Akala.
Yeah.
So
that's some panel.
That's a squad.
and Stormzy as well.
Okay, that's a cast and a half.
It was launching Stormzy's book.
Oh,
thing,
yeah.
Murky Books. And it was really interesting because, these different generations. So it's interesting when you just said Akala in almost the same generation as me. I know Akala's mum and dad. I say this is a bit of exaggeration. I used to babysit Akala. His dad used to go on stage, and I remember once his dad said, "Oh, can you look after him?" And even as a kid, he was a serious youth. I remember they kind of having to look after him. He just looked at me like, and his dad just went on stage and did his thing and come back. But you see, one of the things that, in fact, I'm going to be talking about this tomorrow on the radio, on Radio 4, about books and things that really change your life. I read a book called The Philosophies and Opinions of Marcus Garvey. And when I read that book, I was kind of searching in a way but no one was talking to me about being black. And people around that time started bleaching their skin white and straightening their hair and stuff like that. And I'm thinking, is that the way to go? Is that the way to get on? Then suddenly this book is telling me, have pride in yourself. Look to Africa. Don't be ashamed of being an African. All this kind of stuff. And a lot of my generation read that book. And a lot of them were influenced by Rastafarianism because it talked about black pride. Marcus Garvey kind of was a big inspiration for that movement. And then there were lots of us who said, we want our children to be aware of African history and black history. It's two slightly different things, right? And so we started these little Saturday schools. I started about 6 of them. Some of them lasted for a short time. Some of them didn't. Some of them just in front rooms of people's house. Some of them were in a community centre. I know Akala went to one. I think it was in kind of Camden Town, Kentish Town, that area. I think it was. And you go there and you learn about African history and black history. And even if you, in some of them, they used to call you in and used to go, right, what did you learn in school today? Or this week, sorry. And then you would say, well, I learnt about Napoleon, I learnt this, and I learnt about the invention of electric lights. and then they would sit down and show you the other side. When Napoleon was fighting in Britain, were the black people in that army or whatever it is, and who really invented electricity and who invented the traffic lights and whatever, where did it come from? I mean, even if it was a white guy that did it, you know, it's like the antecedents, where's the history of it? Who was the first person to use mathematics to you know, they say that, I can't remember the name, they say there's somebody in Africa who well before, is it Leonardo da Vinci that did helicopter drawings and stuff like that? Yeah. He did that. He said one day we'll be able to fly and we'll have to use these kind of wings and this kind of copter. And, you know, and so that's what they used to do. They say, what did you learn at school this week? Right, now we're going to tell you the black version of that same story. We're going to give you the black narrative. Or they would just give you, you know, a kind of curriculum. And
doesn't that show the problem with the British curriculum?
100%.
100, man.
Well, yeah.
Henry VIII and things
Yeah.
like that.
And then the Nazi and then
Martin Luther King,
the Holocaust constantly
given a month rather than like the focus that it deserves.
We never learn about that.
But what you have to understand is, and this is where, you know, some people might disagree with me, it's not just race, it's also class.
Okay.
So, you know, if you want to understand real white history, you should read the history of the history of the English working class. I forgot the name of the writer now. E.P. Thompson.
Okay.
Right? That shows you the history of working class people, white people in Britain. Because when they read the history as well, they only get Henry VIII and who he slept with and who this king and begat that queen. And it's not about them, it's all about up here.
Yeah.
It's not about them down there.
Yeah. No, 100%.
You know?
Yeah.
Now, I hesitate when I say this because I don't want to sound like I'm softening the scene or anything like that. But we have to be fair and understand that shackles for slaves, a lot of them were made in my city of Birmingham in England. That horrifies me. You know, my city is famous for steel and metalwork and everything. It made the shackles for slaves. These men went into factories and made shackles for Central Africa. But I also know that there was a lot of women that refused to have relationships with their husband if they didn't stop making the shackles for slaves.
Oh, wow.
In Birmingham.
I never knew that.
No, these are just average white women who never saw a black man in their life.
Mm.
You know? There were women in Birmingham and Midland, actually all over the country, but Birmingham was the centre of it, that would not use sugar because it was the product of slavery.
Wow.
You know, and this is not Wilberforce or anything like that. It's just poor white people who said, we are poor white people, why should we have anything to do with the oppression of poor black people? You know, there were other poor white people that bought a share in a slave. You know what I mean? I know it's a bit of a cliche, but it's not black and white.
Yeah. I think we have to look at all.
There's a lot more to it. There's a lot more to it than what we see. Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, what we don't talk about when you look at English history, there's deep rooted racism within the UK, and people refuse to accept it. Yes. And I feel like I never knew about Birmingham, but everyone definitely knows about Liverpool and their ports.
Yes.
So
all the streets.
We definitely need to look at. I think sometimes when our history, well, I'm not going to say our history, but British history is reflective of the British curriculum. And when you look at it, it's like we never really learn. I think we learned. For me personally, I learned that Malcolm X. They villainized Malcolm X for me, and they made Martin Luther King like a hero. And in actual fact, both of them were heroes, like in my opinion. So I feel like they tampered with some of the history to kind of feed their agenda.
If you look at the Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, and even Muhammad Ali, the boxer, I know one's a sports person, but he was a bit of a leader at the same time. 3 different approaches. One is Christian and passive. One is fight back in Islam, and the other is by any means necessary. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right? we can look to all of them, but you could not say all of them can be my hero at the same time, because you're going to be full of contradictions. You know
I think, yeah.
Maybe they can be your hero, but you have to understand that you can't follow them 100%.
It goes back to what you were saying. We have to take the good and the bad, and so they aren't all going to have the same viewpoints that are going to be realistic. But you have to take what you can, because they all provide something that's really important.
Yeah, 100%. And I think even when we look at Martin Luther King, I think you said passive, and I think passive might not be. It might not be the
non-violent.
Non-violent.
Yeah.
Because I feel like
Martin Luther, when I say passive, it's if you slap your face. If you slapped his face, you would say no, it's okay. Not it's okay.
But turn the other cheek.
Turn the other cheek. Yeah.
But I think with Martin Luther King, a lot of people don't know that he was actually kind of, he had that revolutionary dog in him. It was just, I think at the time he was kind of funded by, well, it's a conspiracy, but like he was funded by kind of white organizations and felt that he had to be more peaceful in his approach.
I will say,
did you just say he had the dog in him?
The revolutionary dog in him, yeah.
I'll tell you something, right? I mean, if you look at my Twitter feed, it's a while back now, maybe about 6 months or so more, I've got this amazing picture of Martin Luther King. He's in a police car, and they put him in a police car with a dog, and they pick the dog, rah, rah, rah. And the dog is just cool, and he's just stroking the dog. Seriously, look at my Twitter feed, and you'll see.
I'm going to check that tonight. Yeah, I'm going to check that tonight, man.
Pictures of Martin Luther King you never see.
Yeah.
And he's just they put him in the car
to make a scene, to make a.
No, the idea was to put him in the car with the dog.
Yeah, it's that
and
bestialization.
Yeah.
And the dog just went.
Yeah.
Do you know? There's a Bible story. It's
you thinking of
Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
and they put him in the fire with the lions.
Daniel.
And Daniel. Yeah, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They put in the fire and they never got burned. But Daniel was put in the lion den. And there's a reggae song that says Daniel in the lion's den. Daniel and the lion was friends. You know, it's a bit like that. You know?
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, just a slight digression. It's
it's true though.
But human beings are flawed, and as long as our leaders are going to be human beings, they're going to be flawed. You're not going to be able to agree with all of them.
Yeah, no one's perfect.
100%. Even me, when people come to me and they say, I've read your poems, and I want to follow you, I say, no, don't, love my work and everything.
I'm human.
But you don't know what I do in my private life and stuff like this. We can get let down.
So can we detach you from your art then?
Well, I would say there's more to me than my art. Right. So my art mainly has been dub, reggae, poetry, and the novels, of course. The novels, in the novels I'm creating characters, so that's another thing. But with my character comes out of my poetry, that is me. That is, all of what you get there is me. But there is more to me.
Do you think that we have trouble, especially in the black community, separating our entertainers from our activists?
Do you know, to answer your question quickly, I think people, sorry for cutting off here, I think people I don't think we get to pick. People just be like, okay, you are going to be a voice of black people. Stormzy, you are going to be my scope into the black community, and it's like it isn't fair, but we have to be aware of it. If you're on media, if you're going on Good Morning Britain or going on a panel, they're going to ask you them hard questions, and if you don't know, then that's it.
No, I remember years ago in the 70s, I go on television and I'd just be talking about a poem, or sometimes it would be the riots or whatever, and then when I'd watch it later, it would say, Benjamin Zephaniah, black community leader. And I go, I didn't say that.
I didn't say that.
I didn't say that. What? They give me all kind of time.
Don't worry, we'll send you the title before.
They will kind of expect you to be a spokesperson for the community. That's why, a lot of the time when you hear me talking, if it's something that's, I think I did it today when we talk about history, and I just said, I'm no historian, but this is the way I see it. But sometimes I will say, we'll be talking about, I don't know, Muslims in Africa, and I'll say I'm no Muslim in Africa, but this is the way I see it. And you're just kind of being honest that way. Sometimes when people try to answer the question, you can see they haven't got the what we now call lived experience. It shows sometimes. So if you announce that you haven't got the lived experience, but you've encountered people or you've seen it from a distance or whatever, then you're on a better footing. But to your question about activists and
entertainers,
I think there's a blurred line. I think some of the best performers are also activists. But now I'm not saying I'm the best, but because that's me, Linton Kwesi Johnson, Jean Breeze, these are people that were involved in, black women's liberation, and Linton Kwesi Johnson was involved in the Black Panthers and the Race a Day Collective, and myself in various.
I think it's important though to have a distinction between your generation's entertainers and our generation's entertainers.
I was going to come to that.
Yeah.
I was going to come to that. You see, we felt it. You see, if I went on television or just say I made a record, in those days, 7-inch record, right? You put it on a record player, I've gone into a studio, made that record, and it's about the flowers and the birds and the bees and whatever. I go back to my community, Handsworth and Birmingham, and they said, you had 3.5 minutes, whatever a single time was. And all you talked about is the birds and the bees when we're getting beat up down here by the racists and the police. When we live in these kind of conditions. You had a platform, you made that record, and that's all you talk about. Or you went on television, and all you did was, talk about, flowers or daffodils or whatever. People would be angry because we didn't have a platform. There's very few black people on television, no black politicians at all. We had no voice, so the only voice we had was our music and our poetry. That's changed now to a certain extent. And when I answered you and I said, well, my work is part of me, but not all of me. I mean, you probably would never get this from my work alone. Maybe from my autobiography I talk about it, but you would never get this from my poetry. But the thing I am obsessed with is probably the wrong word to use, but the thing I really love and feel passionate about is meditation. I love meditation. I love martial arts. I've practiced it all my life. You don't really get that from my poetry. A little bit I've written about, but not so much, about men's health and prostate cancer, and men talking about mental health is a real passion of mine. Some black men are beginning to do it now a little bit. But it still frustrates me that 1 in 8 white men will get prostate cancer, which sounds bad, yeah? 1 in 4 black guys get it. And we get a more aggressive strain.
Yeah.
And something like more than 2/3 of black people don't even know where the prostate is.
Boy.
Black men don't even know where the prostate is.
Eat your tomatoes, man. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, you know about that?
Yeah.
So these are also passions of mine, but you don't really get that in my poetry. Because back then, my main focus was human rights.
Do you know what? I peeped your Shaolin Kung Fu thing there, so like, I see you, man. Yeah.
So, we're multifaceted, and now coming back to the people of today, we started listening to reggae, right, from Jamaica, and we would listen to it. First of all, just listen to it, and then some of us got guitars and basses and things and started playing English reggae. The Jamaicans looked at us and said, it's not the same, but it's all right, we're representing ourselves. Until there was an English reggae scene. In those days, reggae was the big music with the big message. Then that died out. It kind of got a little bit funky, American influences, but then bands like Soul to Soul and people like that kind of made a soulful kind of British sound as well. And alongside that, some cats started doing, first of all they started imitating American hip hop. Then they started doing their own. I'm talking about people like Rodney P, you know, London Posse and people like that. And then you come further on, and then you get grime. Now, I've probably missed out a couple of genres in between there. I'm no musicologist.
Disclaimer.
Garage.
Yeah.
Was
yeah.
before.
Yeah. Garage was people listening to American music and just thinking, let's make it our own.
The DJ.
Now, when grime came, I went, yeah. You know, I mean, because I was living in East London at the time. I used to be patron of an organisation called Tower Hamlets Arts Project. We had a young boy there, I can't remember his name, but he went on to become Dizzy Rascal.
Oh, boy in the corner.
Oh, wow.
We coached him and whatever.
Yeah.
You know. And now he's a patron with me. You know what I mean?
Oh,
So,
wow.
Yeah.
so yeah. But I'm going to be really honest, and I'm not putting Dizzy down, but when grime came, I thought it's coming from the streets of East London. When it first started, it was angry, it was kind of political in a very, not parliamentary way, but in the real streets way, you know. And I was surprised at how quickly it went commercial. You know what I mean? You had a grime artist one day saying, I'm the roots, I'm from the street. And next day they want to do a duet with J-Lo.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just like very quickly. Usually it takes somebody like...
Underground, you stay underground for a bit. And
Yeah. But very quickly, you know?
Yeah.
So that I found a bit disappointing with the grime scene. I still respect some grime artists. Jammer is like, I'm like his uncle. I don't know if you know Jammer.
Of course.
His father used to be my bass player.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I saw him as a little baby, put him in my arms, you know.
Yeah.
So what do you think is the right way to, when you get that kind of platform, whether it's music or something else? Because a lot of people would say when they get there, they want to be authentic, but at the same time, they want to continue to have those opportunities again. So is there like a right way?
So when's the right time to sell out?
You see, I would rather them not sell out at all. I think you can, if you've hit the charts doing grime, or I mean, charts don't really matter that now. But if you've made a success of yourself, you really don't have to, you know, want to duet with some
commercial artists.
Yeah.
I think it's all about
because
your morals and stuff and being authentic to yourself.
Yeah.
I think if you
that's it at the end of the day.
Yeah.
No, for somebody like Stormzy, for example, I think Stormzy's done it almost the opposite way around. Stormzy was never political. I never really heard him being political when he was younger.
Yeah.
But what he's done, he's got on the platform now, and actually he's using it a little bit.
Yeah.
He is now, for sure.
And then he's putting his money where his mouth is, right? He started a publishing company for black writers.
Yeah.
He supports the scholarship in
Oxford.
Yeah.
Oxford and Cambridge.
Right,
So
and you know, and he's doing some other things as well, which is, and the statement he makes when he's on big platforms like Glastonbury and stuff like that.
Dave as well. Also.
Yeah, especially Dave.
Dave, I really like. You know,
Yeah.
to me, you see, when I listen to Dave, I just think like he's a poet.
Mm.
You know, the cat's a poet. You know,
Yeah,
what I mean?
he's years ahead for his age. He's just mind blowing.
Maturity, man.
Yeah. So you know, and one could say, you know, what's he going to do now? Is he can go really commercial, or it's almost like his stuff is so hardcore. It would be so difficult to go commercial. I mean, in 5 years' time, ask me again, and we'll see. But I can't see, because he should only go in one direction now. He should be able to keep his integrity. If he can do what he's done with this body of music he's got now, and stay in that direction, I think the future's
very, very bright for him.
Yeah.
He's definitely going in the right direction.
Well, it's funny. I was going to say the future's bright, and I was going to say for all of us, but it's, you know, for him, yes. Now, for us, or for you guys,
to navigate, especially
and,
our
you know,
kids as well.
Yeah, and for the next generation, you see, we have to have hope. You see, I remember when I was in Lebanon during the war, and I had some really bad experiences there, you know. One day I was walking and I just came across about this high and about the width of this room, the length of this room, a pile of dead bodies burning, you know. And I just, you know, in the middle of the night, just burning. I'm a vegan. I don't eat meat. I'm just completely plant-free, plant-based diet. That's one thing. Every time I smell meat, I just smell that. It just takes me back because flesh is flesh, burning. You know. So that's the kind of situation I'm telling you. And the Israelis were bombing that place left, right, and centre. And well, not just the Israelis, I beg your pardon, but there was a kind of civil war going on, and Israel was involved in it. It's complicated. And I remember one night they were bombing an area where we were living, and I'm telling you, I'm in a house. The 2 doors down are being bombed, 2 doors this way being bombed, people are being bombed, carpet bombing. And then they fly away, and I go, and then somebody said, okay, we're going to have a party, and we're going to read some poetry, and then we're going to announce it's like a wedding ceremony, but it's like an engagement ceremony. And I'm like, I'm traumatized. And I said, you're going to do that now? And they said, look,
it's their world, isn't it?
They want to break our spirit. We can't let them break our spirit. And that's what we have to recognize as well. We should not let them break our spirits. So we have to have hope. We have to keep creating music. We have to keep falling in love, or whatever it is we do, because what they would like us to do, and I'm talking, when I say they, I don't want to sound like abstract, I'm talking about racists who think that black people are getting too uppity kind of thing. They want our spirits to be broken. They want to see us, and I'm not putting this job down, driving buses, cleaning toilets, that's where they want to see us stay. I can remember a time when my sister, she was called 11 plus, it's an exam at school. She passed 11 plus and went to grammar school. The local paper had it in the local paper, black girl goes to grammar school.
Oh my God.
Then she went to university to do law. Local black girl goes to university to do law. There was, when I was young, there was some black people in university, but they were always the daughters of some African king or queen.
Just a little bit, yeah.
Not just an average normal person.
Yeah.
So for a local black girl,
it's big news.
It made the news, man.
Yeah.
It was in the papers, right? And, that's the kind of place they want to see us, so we don't go to university. Because I think it was Malcolm X that said it. You sound well read to me, you probably know this better than me, but racists hate the black man. But what they hate even more is the educated black man.
Well, I've had that one before,
So we've got to have hope, we've got to keep educating ourselves. And sometimes you can be impatient, but we've got to realise sometimes things take time. We are what I talk about in my poems, the impatient generation. You know what I mean?
Fast food generation, we want everything now.
Well, I didn't mean it so much in that way, but I mean people who are fighting against racism, we want it now.
Change is coming eventually.
Yeah. But yes, it will come. When I was younger and getting older, everybody was complaining about the young generation. They don't want to hear about consciousness anymore. We used to call it consciousness. I remember hearing Akala, and I think it was low-key, talking about the way we say conscious music and conscious people. And they kind of didn't understand. They said, why is it conscious? What's the opposite of conscious? Unconscious. That's not what we meant. We meant raising your conscience. So some people can walk around just doing what they're told, not thinking for themselves. Your consciousness is not raised. Once you raise your conscience, you can think for yourself. You can see, you can read a newspaper and read between the lines, etc., etc. I guess now the nearest thing people would say woke or something like that.
Yeah,
enlightened.
Woke is the word.
Yeah. But we mean raised in your conscience. So we were everybody was complaining, the youth now, they haven't got that. But obviously, you have, because it's you. We were talking about you, right? Yeah. We talk about you, and I see it all the time. Yeah. Now, at my age, I do see people who just all they do is sit in the living room, right, and watch television and everything. And they will still tell me, the youth of today don't do this, and I say, they do, I say, in my university, I'm talking to young people all the time, and they're angry, and they want to do stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sometimes they find it difficult to find channels to do it, but they want to do it. And they're just sitting watching television, so they don't
They don't know. They're not out
They
there.
don't know. Yeah, they're not out there.
And I think it's key. And this is a reason why we started this podcast, because it's key that we feel like young black people, especially at university, have a platform to speak about these issues, because we do feel strongly about it.